If you're in need of a step-by-step guide on how you should get started wholesaling real estate, this video is going to be for you because I'm going to go into details on how you should get started, and I'm going to be giving you all the steps that you will need to know in order to run a successful wholesaling business. Let's get into it. Now, the very first thing that you should do is make sure that you have a solid understanding for the wholesale process. When somebody asks you what is wholesaling, you should be able to break it down and say, hey, this is what you do in the beginning, this is what you do in the middle, this is what you do in the end. Of course, that may take a day or two for you to get that solid understanding, but don't waste too much time because then you'll just be caught in analysis paralysis. So you're going to find a motivated seller, which I'm going to show you later on in this video how you can find motivated sellers, how you can market for motivated sellers, how you find your cash buyers, how you find your title companies. I'm going to get more into details on that a little bit later. But once you find that motivated seller, you should be shooting to get the property under contract for at least $5,000 to $10,000 less than what it's actually worth in its current condition. So for example, let's say that the property is currently worth $30,000. You as the wholesaler, you have to come in at a price less than $30,000 in order for you to be able to sell that property to a cash buyer and for it to make sense to that cash buyer. So if you know it's worth $30,000, your AB agreement, which would be between you and the seller, would have a contract price of $25,000. Now, once you do get it under contract, of course, that's when your title company or your attorney office will come into play. You have to send that AB agreement into that title company or attorney office. They're going to open escrow. They're going to make sure there's no taxes, liens, or mortgages owed against the property because you don't want your cash buyer to be liable for any of the sellers that they have on the property before they actually purchase. So they're going to make sure that the title is clear. Now, while they're in the process of doing that, you need to be going out trying to find cash buyers. I'm going to get more into details on how you can do that as well, like I said. But once you find a cash buyer, you can say, hey, I got this property and I'm asking $30,000 for this property and I need you to close in such and such time frame. So at that point, you will get a BC agreement. You will get that signed by you and the buyer, and you send that same BC agreement over to your title company or attorney office in order for them to process that and set a closing date for the buyer to buy the property after the property comes back clear by the title company or attorney office. So at that point, you collect your check at the closing date, and then you just reinvest a certain amount back into your business to continue to generate new leads. But that's pretty much wholesaling in a nutshell. Now I'm going to take you into each individual step on how you're going to generate your leads and get you to your first $5,000 to $10,000. But before we do that, please just hit the like button, subscribe, and click the notification bell so YouTube can see that this video is valuable and they'll continue to push it out to a larger audience and we can continue to grow the channel here. Now let's get into the first step. The very first step that you should take whenever you're getting ready to start wholesaling is identifying what market you're going to be in. If you're in a market that has cash buyers, I say get started in your backyard because you're going to know your market more than anyone else. And if a seller says, hey, I need you to come out to the property, I don't want to discuss anything over the phone, guess what? You can just pick up and go to the property and meet with the seller, when a lot of people that's virtual may not be able to do that and they will have to get somebody else to come over to the property. But the way you can find other areas that may be good areas to wholesale in, you could just go right in Google. And for my example, I'm going to put in population by city here in North Carolina, and it's going to bring up a website known as NorthCarolinaDemographics.com. It's going to rearrange all the cities by most to least in population. And guess what? You could pick some that has a median population of 1 to 300,000 or 1 to 400,000. And those are good areas to go into. You could also pick a large size city and look for small cities around that particular area to go in as well too. So if I'm looking at Charlotte, I may say, hey, I want to go into Gaston County, or I may want to go into Rock Hill or whatever area surround that particular city. And those are great markets to go in because they're right on the outside, where a cash buyer that is flipping properties here in Charlotte, they can go out 30 to 40 minutes to flip a property whole as a rental. So that's why don't rule out those areas and make sure that you use that website. Only thing that's going to change is if you're in South Carolina or in Florida, it's going to be FloridaDemographics.com or SouthCarolinaDemographics.com. But that is the ideal way to find your market that you want to go in. Like I said, if you are in a competitive market, I say start in that market because you know if you have any deals that you get under contract at the right price, it's gonna sell like this. So use that for step one, and let's get into the next step. Now, the next step is building your list. Now, you can do this a free way, or you could do it a paid way. Now, of course, the free way, you're gonna spend more time building the list when it comes down to the free way. You're gonna have to go up to the courthouse. You're gonna have to door knock. You're gonna have to do a lot more in order to create a motivated sellers list. And when you go up to the courthouse, you can pull pre-foreclosures, you can pull eviction lists, you can pull divorce lists. It's just so many different lists that you can pull at your local courthouse. Now, like I said, it is going to take time, but you better believe you're going to have the most recent data because you're going directly to the source to actually get it. Now, when it comes to driving for dollars, you're going to have to get a pen and paper, and you will have to spend money in gas in order to drive to different neighborhoods. You're going to pick out some zip codes in your city that may have some older properties that you know some may need to be fixed up. And you're going to drive around those particular areas, and you're going to write down the property address for you to skip trace a little bit later. So those are just some free ways that you can build lists. And you may not have a whole lot of sellers information, but since that is the most recent data and a lot of people are not doing that, it may not take as much to close those type of deals whenever you're going the free route. Now, you can use the paid route, and the paid route is going to get you into a market in less than 10 to 15 minutes. So the paid routes that I would recommend is starting a free trial with PropStream. Now, in the free trial with PropStream, they're not going to give you the 10,000 records during that free trial. They may give you, I believe it was 50 records that you can pull, but after you pay the $99, you will actually have access to the 10,000 records, and you can build absentee owner lists. You can build pre-foreclosure lists inside of PropStream. You can build eviction lists inside of PropStream as well too. There's so many different lists that you can build inside of there in under 15 minutes, and then you'll be able to skip trace that data, which we would talk about in the next step, and start making calls to those particular sellers. But that's one paid way that you can find motivated sellers in 5 to 15 minutes. Another paid way that you can find sellers is by using a list broker. A list broker can be very useful, especially when it comes to specialty lists such as pre-foreclosure, tax delinquent, code enforcement lists. You can get those type of lists. Now, it's going to be pricier than what you would actually pay in PropStream, but that's just how it's going to play out. I recommend just using PropStream, pulling you an absentee list, pulling some of the specialty lists inside of there, like the vacant lists and everything, and just getting started that way before you go spend a whole lot of money on data from a list broker. Now, the next step in the process is skip tracing your data. Now, you can do this multiple ways as well too. You can skip trace with a paid service. I recommend paid service because they're going to have the most recent data depending on what skip tracer service that you actually use. Now, the free way, you can use a website such as True People Search that will give you free information. So let's say you built a list of vacant properties that you drove for dollars and built. You will have to enter in that information individually, but every time you enter in a seller's address, a phone number is going to become available for you to write down. Now, like I said, some of these numbers may not be as accurate because you are getting this information for free, but that is a free way that you can skip trace. And also, if you get any data from the courthouse, such as the eviction list, I know here in Charlotte, the eviction list, it comes with the seller's phone number if you get it directly from the courthouse, but that's just in certain situations. Now, there are paid skip tracer services that you can use as well too. I use Bat Skip Tracing, and for my second option, you can use Skip Genie or REI Skip, whatever you want to use if Bat Skip Tracing don't come out with numbers. But I've had the best hit rates with Bat Skip Tracing. It is 15 cents per record, but it's going to be worth using Bat Skip Tracing instead of using a skip tracer service that may charge you 8 cents, because 9 times out of 10, their records are not completely updated the way they need to be, and it's a reason why it's cheaper. You want the least amount of wrong phone numbers that you possibly can get, so make sure you use a higher skip tracing service when it comes to skip tracing your sellers. And if you want to use any of these services, I'm gonna have them linked below, so feel free to use my link, and let's get into the next step. Now it's time to market to your sellers list. The way I recommend marketing to your sellers list is going to be the most efficient way. You can use $1 that has 3 to 10 lines to call sellers. And the reason why I recommend using $1, because if you hand dial, you have to sit and enter in each individual seller phone number. So why not put that in $1 and let the dollar call 3 to 4 sellers at once, and then the first one pick up. You speak with them and see if they want to sell. Now, you could go the free route and use your cell phone, but like I said, it may take you a lot of time to get through your list, and I just feel like it's not the efficient way to do it. Now, for call tools, I do pay $119 per month. It's a service that I've been using for years, and I definitely recommend it. There's a lot of other services out there, such as Batch Dialer, which I used before. You also have Mojo Dialer. I never used Mojo Dialer, but I know out of Batch Dialer and Call Tools is definitely what I recommend. Feel free to check that out below as well too. Now, if you watch any of my previous videos, you know that I'm always saying, hey, you need to have an omni-channel marketing presence. So the next marketing channel that you can use is text messaging. Now, I always recommend REI Reply. Recently, I've been having some issues with it. I've completed the registration, and what I've noticed with my testing when it comes to REI Reply is that the first initial message that goes out, it says that it's getting delivered, but for some reason I still feel like it's being blocked because I'm not getting as much responses as I did before I did the registration. We were forced to do the registration August 31st. So I had to go ahead and get that taken care of. But when the second message normally goes out, I'm having a better response rate from the sellers. But if you want to check REI Reply out to send text messages, it is $99 per month. It was $49 before. I pretty much told you my opinion on it currently. As I do more tests, of course, I'm going to update you on the process of sending text messages using REI Reply at this current time. Now, my next marketing channel that I would recommend is Ringless voicemail. So basically, you call in the seller directly, you send them a Ringless voicemail where it drops a voicemail into the seller mailbox. You're pretty much exhausting all marketing types to this particular seller. If they don't respond, you just cycle it through 3 to 4 times, and then maybe you have to go to another marketing channel that may be a little bit more expensive, such as direct mail for the sellers that you didn't get in contact with. You put them in a 6-month sequence where you send them mail pieces every month, different types of mail pieces, to see if you can get a response out of them that way. But those are just the marketing channels that you can use in order to try to get in contact with sellers. Once you get a response from a seller that say, hey, yes, I want to sell this property, the next thing you need to do is gather all the necessary information that's needed in order to make the seller an accurate cash offer. So basically, you're going to ask about the property condition. You're going to ask if they're the only decision makers on the property. Important thing, you must ask, how soon are they looking to sell? Because that's going to determine how you're going to follow up with the seller if they're not ready to sell at this particular time, but they have a later date in mind. Now, once you gather that information, you can either keep the seller on the phone and run comps on the property. And when I say comps, I'm talking about you're going to look at the comparable properties in the area that's in similar condition, and you're going to try to get the property under contract at that price of the property that is in similar condition to the property that you're trying to get under contract. And if you're looking for a video on how you run comps, definitely feel free to check this video out here, and that'll go into details on how you run comps. But after you run comps and the seller say, yes, I would accept your offer, then you put the property under contract with the AB agreement that I mentioned before. If the seller says no, of course, you should have a Podio system or some type of CRM, or you can just write the seller information down on a paper to say, hey, I'm going to follow up with the seller in 3 months or 6 months to see if they changed their mind on the price, or if they spoke with other wholesalers or buyers that gave them the same price and they're coming down to reality and say, okay, maybe this price that this wholesaler offered me wasn't a bad price at all. So that's how you deal with sellers that don't accept your offer. You should never throw those type of leads away. Now, back to the seller that says yes. Once you get that property under contract with an AB agreement, you send it over to the title company, and now it's time to find your cash buyers, which is the next step. So in this step of finding cash buyers, there's multiple ways that you can do that. You can go up to the courthouse and look at the buyers that are buying pre-foreclosures. Those are buyers that you know that are actively buying in the area, and you know that they're buying for cash because they have to pay a cash price whenever it's time for them to purchase at the auction. Now, the pay way that you can find cash buyers is by using PropStream. So there's multiple ways that you can use PropStream. So let's say that your subject property is in Charlotte, North Carolina. You can easily go on a prop stream. You can filter out LLCs that are buying in the area and look for buyers that are purchasing cash. And you can pull a list of those buyers. You can also get realtors to sell your deals. So if you find a realtor that works with cash buyers, which in PropStream, you can use the flippers tab, those realtors are working with cash buyers. So if you pull those lists of realtors, send them a quick text message saying, hey, I got a property at such and such, and I'm looking for a buyer. If you have a buyer, I'll let you tack your fee on top of my asking price. And you got to leave that wiggle room for that particular agent to make money on that deal. Or some agents may be like, okay, well, it's fine if I don't make anything, because I know once this buyer flips this property, they're going to list it with me and I can get my 6% that way. Now, that's just in certain situations. So take that with a grain of salt and always assume that the agent is looking to make money on the deal up front. You can also use Facebook investment groups in your area to find cash buyers. Now, you definitely need to vet those buyers out of there and see if they're actively buying in that particular area, so you're not actually dealing with another wholesaler that's trying to daisy chain your deal. And another way that you can also do it is through JVing with other wholesalers that are currently doing deals in your particular area that you know have a cash buyers list. Because after you close that transaction with them, guess what? You have a cash buyer that you got for free through a JV partner that you brought on the deal. So the next deal, you just take it directly to the buyer and say, hey, do you want to buy it? So that's just ways that you can get your deal sold. Now let's get into the next step. Now, the next thing, you need to make sure that you get an earnest money deposit from your buyers. You need to make sure you get them to send that over to your attorney office or your title company first, because whenever they see what your assignment is, they can't renegotiate if they got $2,500 to $5,000 tied up in that particular property. So make sure you get the earnest money deposit so you can protect your assignment fee for any buyers that may want to play games when they come down to closing, when they see you're making $10,000 to $15,000 as an assignment fee. Now, from there, only thing you got to do is set a closing date. Once the title company set a closing date, the seller is going to come in, the buyer is going to come in, they're going to fund the transaction. If you sold the deal to the buyer for $30,000, but the AB agreement between you and the seller is $20,000, then guess what? The difference is $10,000. That $10,000 is going to get written out to you in a check or direct deposit into your account, and you have $10,000. From there, you just reinvest a certain amount back into your business and you repeat the process. And as time goes on, then you look into hiring a cold caller to take your place on the phones, or hiring somebody to send text messages. And you just continue to build your business out until you remove yourself and then you're working on the business and not in it. And it's going to be a lot of trial and error when it comes down to that. But as long as you stick with it and you remain consistent, you're going to build a successful wholesaling business. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you next time.